I said there were things that didn't quite add up about the tragic bombing of that girls' school in Iran. I said that last week, a bombing that was almost certainly accidental. One that Iran and the UN and journalists around the world said killed at least 165 people, maybe 175. Most or all of them young girls, depending on who you read and how anti-American they were. Now, like I said last week, something did happen at the school, but the only supposed eyewitness report by an alleged reporter couldn't be trusted. Sounded like the Iranian regime's propaganda. And now I do think I have the full story. Claims by Donald Trump that the school was hit by misfiring Iranian rockets are also false, absolutely false, because look at the school and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard compound that was clearly the main target. The compound was right next to the school. It seems 7 precise hits. That is an attack. It's not a misfire. And this picture shows how it happened. It's the same compound 13 years ago, when the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had the whole compound, including the building top right that was later turned into a school. And they're all behind the same wall with guard towers. So the Americans were clearly working off dated information when they did their targeting, and with very tragic results. But were 165 girls killed, or 175? Well, no, the regime was careful not to release pictures of the Guard Corps buildings that were damaged, because then you might say, hang on, were all the dead really little girls? What about the soldiers? And when you see the coffins at the mass funeral for the dead, there are only about 50, and half are all adult coffins. And when you look at the empty graves prepared for the dead, you see fewer than 100. So, bottom line, bad American research caused the tragedy. The school got bombed, the girls got killed. And that is terrible and horrible and clearly an accident. But it wasn't 175 dead, it seems, and certainly not all girls. A lot of adults in those coffins, as you would expect from a hit on what was predominantly a military target, recklessly housed right next to a school. Now, I said at the top of the show, what is this stupid game the Albanese government is playing? You know, oh, we're not really party to this war, we're not attacking anyone. There was a brilliant piece on exactly that in the Australian newspaper today, and I urge you to read it. It is by the country's top foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan of The Australian, who joins me every Monday. Greg, great to see you again. Terrific piece. It inspired my editorial tonight, so I'll give you credit for that. I acknowledge that. Now, we have sailors on an American submarine that the government says they weren't actually helping it sink that Iranian ship. We produce parts for the F-35 fighters Israel uses to bomb Iran, but the government says, no, our parts they're the non-lethal parts on the plane. And now this government is considering helping defend our allies in the Persian Gulf from Iranian attack without attacking Iran. What is going on?
Well, it's great to be with you, Andrew. I think the Albanese government is not only an incompetent government, it's a very, very cowardly government. And it's trying to say to the Americans, we're doing everything with you. We're 100% with you. But it's trying to say to its own supporters and the left and the Greens, we're doing nothing. We're nowhere near those terrible Americans. It's too scared of the Americans to say it thinks the action is illegal. And it's too scared of the left in Australia to say that it thinks the action is legal. Because we do absolutely nothing or next to nothing for our own defence, we rely 100% on the Americans. Now, part of getting close to the Americans is putting our own troops into American formations. So we have quite a lot of sailors on American submarines, and that's supposed to ramp up eventually to be 400. We have Australians doing line jobs in the Middle East, US Middle East Command, CENTCOM, and in the US Pacific Command, PACOM. They're not liaison officers, they're doing line jobs. Now, Albanese claimed, in my view, in a preposterous interview, that no Australian anywhere in the world, acting on behalf of the government, had engaged in any offensive action towards Iran. So what did our sailors on the American submarines do? Did they go to the mess room, have a group hug and sing Kumbaya while the Americans attacked the Iranian vessel in Sri Lanka? Not only that, our intelligence joint facilities with the Americans, Pine Gap, is certainly providing missile targeting information to the Americans. The submarine that took out the Iranian ships, the US submarine almost certainly taking advantage of our Harold Holt communications facility in Exmouth in Western Australia. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we are an indispensable ally of the US, and look, although we have almost no equipment ourselves, we're even serving on US equipment, and then say, but the minute a thing is a bit unpopular, we're going to pretend that our guys did nothing. Now, I think it's probably pretense. Did our guys really stop doing what they were doing on the submarine, or is Albanese just taking refuge in the fact that maybe they didn't push the button that shot the missile? God alone knows, but this sort of miasma of unclarity mixed with absolutely no effort on our own behalf is just a web of cowardice for the Australian government and, as a result, for the Australian nation.
What a contrast, Greg. You might recall the late, great Jim Molan, when he was in the army, was Chief of Staff of the Combined Allied Forces in Iraq, successfully fighting the insurgency over there. There was no, it's not really part of the lethal thing, it's just sitting in the mess room, you know. No, he was a Major General in command of American troops. And now we go, oh, no, we're not really there. We're not. And I wonder, Greg, when we won't even openly help America, and when we do give help, it's really tiny, tiny little bit of help, why would the US send us, sell us 3 or more nuclear submarines after this?
Well, you're absolutely right, Andrew. So about 20 years ago, we made an in-principle decision as a nation, as a government, that our forces, integrated with American and British forces, would go into operations with them. So we don't do that. If we've got an Australian soldier, on a diplomatic exchange mission with the Indonesian military or the Italian military or something, he comes home if they're having actual hostile operations anywhere. But we have for years been going into operations with the Brits and with the Americans. And that has been part of the intimate alliance that we always boast about. But the Albanese government is so scared of its own shadow that now it's claiming we won't even do that. But it's planned that there will eventually be 400 Australian sailors on American submarines. Theoretically, we could hold
all of them doing nothing, Greg.
American
all of them
nuclear
doing nothing.
Submarine deployments. So why would the Americans want to go on with an arrangement like that? And our own defence effort is so utterly pitiful that this is the only show in town for us. So Albanese is caught between trying to be a bargain basement Emmanuel Macron and also trying to be all the way with LBJ. And the one tribute I would pay to Albanese, there is a kind of dark genius with the way he's got away with doing nothing. The Liberals haven't effectively challenged him on this. And because he pretends with the Americans and he gives them some money and all that, he has so far avoided a rebuke from the Americans. But are they really going to take submarines out of their line of battle to give them to Australia in 10 or 15 years' time? I'd be very surprised.
Well, I'd be even more surprised because you can tell that, fickle allies are right on Donald Trump's mind, given that Britain didn't even allow them to use some of its joint bases at first for the attack, like Diego Garcia. So I think this whole issue of if we're an ally, will we be there when America needs them, will come into play when deciding on these submarines. We shall see. Greg Sheridan, thank you so much and congratulations again for that piece today. Again, I urge people to read it. Thank you.